Next item, approval of the meeting minutes from May 10, 2023.
I move to approve the meeting minutes, May 10th, 2023.
Second.
Motion was made and second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Very well. Next item on our agenda is public input portion. And any person that is not a member of the building committee who desires to address the committee concerning a matter on the agenda shall submit a written request to the co-chairs prior to the start of the meeting stating the agenda item upon which they desire to speak. Persons are permitted to address the committee for a period not to exceed 5 minutes. Uh-oh. Yes, please.
Still upright, so.
Everything okay over there? I do have one person from the public looking to speak, Anton Viveris.
Thank you. Anton Viveris, 45 Bayview Park. They've seen a lot of talk about school safety and protecting the kids, and some designs I've seen was floor to ceiling glass. Well, like bulletproof glass runs about $25 a square foot. So if we put a wall there, we can cut down a little bit on the cost. So I've been looking at a few designs, and I've got one here I'd like to submit for you to take a look at to promote school safety and protect children rather than rounding them up and put them into a room that locked from the inside. So I just like to submit this.
Sure.
Let me take a look at it.
Yeah, we'll take it here. Yeah. Thank you, Anton. Well, at least for a few minutes. Is this just one copy of multiple?
Yeah, but there's a copy machine upstairs.
We will receive that. Thank you. You all set?
Yes.
Very well. I have no other requests to speak. We'll move on to our next item.
Yeah, if you want me to take that after Bill, I
Sure,
can
Don, that's
submit it in
fine.
a minute, so just for the
I
record.
do that.
I can make copies.
You might
and
as well take
scan
that
it
as
too.
well.
I can do that. And
Okay.
Okay, item number 4, architects update. What do we have tonight?
Hello, good evening. Matt LaRue here from HMFH. I also have Connor Heisman from HMFH with me in the room, and Tina is on the meeting as well separately.
Thank you.
And we have a brief update today that I'll share my screen with you.
It was the magic button.
Yes.
Thank you.
So continuing to work towards finalizing the demographics report. Last time we reported that we were pursuing incorporating in end of the year enrollment data as a way of ensuring that we're getting the most accurate count of students who are in the building at any point during the year. And we have received the data from the school district. There's still a request in for this data from RIDE, but we're just proceeding with the data that we have from the district. And we'll use the RIDE data when we get it as a check on this data. So Cropper has started their analysis run with this set of data as a separate standalone analysis, and they estimate that it'll have it for the week of June 4th. And once we have that number, we'll be able to use that to start our talks with RIDE. In the meantime, as we're proceeding, developing plans and space sizes in our program, we've identified a placeholder number of enrollment that we're pretty confident gets us towards where we're going. And it'll be a matter of a small difference once we get the final number from Cropper. So we are proceeding, even though we don't have the final number in hand, with a placeholder number. Next, I wanted to, and just jump in if you have questions about any of these. Next, we're going to talk about the sustainability visioning session that we talked about last time. So that has been scheduled. It's for June 21st, not the 22nd, like it says on the slide. Sorry about that. It's planned that there will be 2 separate sessions that day, one in the afternoon, one in the evening, to help capture as many people as we can and work with their schedules. I think there was even talk about making it attendable online as well, but that's to be determined.
Do we know where those are going to be? Matt?
I haven't heard yet where they'll be. I don't know if Rosemary has any information she could relate.
So this is Derek Osterman from Colliers, and I can start to address part of that. So we've set that as a tentative date. It's actually an action item as the last thing on the agenda this
Okay.
evening to accept it. But right now, the idea is roughly that we would hold the daytime session before your building committee meeting. RIDE would like to come in to be part of your building committee meeting as well as tour your buildings. And then as kind of the second half or predominant part of the building committee meeting, after RIDE makes their presentation, we'd have the evening session. So we would want you to accept that as a plan later this evening as part of the agenda. And then we'll figure out all of the logistics and get invites out. But that's the thinking around that,
Very well.
is that we've.
Thanks, Derek.
Sure.
Likely at a school though, right? At one of the schools.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the date and there is a budget workshop, budget
That's-
hearing,
that's the
public hearing.
final.
Is that final?
That's the final budget hearing, I believe.
On the
I just-
21st?
Yeah,
The first
June-
one's the 13th on a Tuesday, and when the town council is supposed to approve the budget is, I have Wednesday, the 21st at 6 o'clock. So I don't know, Chris, if you can confirm that, or Mark?
I believe that's been extended 1 week. So it's going to be adopted the following Wednesday, the last Wednesday in June. Yeah,
We still have the 13th?
no,
13th been
I
canceled.
believe that's not going to happen. It's going to be out 1 week. So the first hearing would be on the 20th or whatever the Wednesday is.
21st.
So
Yeah. So the 21st is going to be at night.
It sounds like there's still some logistics to be worked out. I was just wondering where it might be, but I guess to answer the question, it would be
It would be
likely at one of the schools.
Yes, so we'll have to work that out because RIDE confirmed that they can make it down. I think we need to capture their, respect their timeline and have that. So it might be, we'll split up and try to be at 2 places one time or whatever. We'll work.
That's
it out.
fine. So logistically it has to be worked out. We can
Yeah.
talk more later, but again, I was more wondering where it might be, but at the school makes the most sense for sure. So, okay. Thank you. Matt, you can continue if you like.
Okay. And then I just want to report on various site investigations that have been happening. The traffic consultant has been doing traffic counts at intersections around the site over the last 2 weeks. And they will begin a field review next week. And all of this information will then go into a report that will be part of the stage 2 submission and will help guide us in the design of the flow of traffic on the site and possible issues that may come up off the site. Then our geoenvironmental consultant is visiting Goday's site tomorrow in the morning. And they're looking for things that could show up under a phase 1 investigation report. Anything that's reportable will go into that report. And then could trigger a phase 2 investigation to look at how it could be addressed. So we will report back to you the next time to let you know what comes out of that visit. Our civil engineer has been working in becoming familiar with the site. He's been out there. And the wetlands consultant is part of under his work. They've given us some observations of the site, which were helpful to understand the conditions that we have to deal with as we go forward with the design. They're also working with us to advise what should be done, what we recommend for Aquidneck Avenue improvements that are related to the driveway openings to the school. And the utilities portion of that, I think, has been settled, but there is some question about whether we'd want to recommend a crosswalk across Aquidneck Avenue to a sidewalk that they're putting in on the other side of Aquidneck. We're waiting to get the site survey complete so that we can show something, and we'll talk about that with you to find out what you think about our recommendations before we go forward with anything. So that will happen probably in the next 2 weeks. And about that site survey, so the surveyor has been working for the past couple months, and they have their aerial control point survey complete. Their initial legal research has been complete, site control network complete. The wetlands flags have been surveyed and picked up. They've done an initial monumentation survey, and they are expecting to get the raw aerial mapping from their consultant by June 1st, and then they'll add their field data to that. And once they have all that in and annotated and checked, they will issue it as a preliminary plan. So it's somewhere in mid-June, we expect to get that site survey. And just other things that I haven't already mentioned that come in our 2-week look ahead. We're continuing to look at the space program and find efficiencies within that. So we're working with our working group, the educational planning working group, which meets every Wednesday morning. The next meeting will focus on that. We hope to make some progress and get that to a point where we think we're good. We've been continuing to look at the pod layouts that we introduced to you last time. And as we're doing that, we're now starting to look at the shared zone of the building, the kind of middle area, and creating layouts for that. We will come back at the next building committee meeting with some designs to show you and talk about the progress that we're making there. And then the next section here is all the site consultants that we've talked about. Then at the bottom, we're helping to support the discussions about the 4th CTE program. I think Manuel has a presentation that he's put together and will be making available around helping to advance that discussion. And we're looking at the building and site schematics now, and we'll report back to you in a couple of weeks. And then the sustainability workshop, we're preparing our presentation and the plan for those workshops in the next couple of weeks. So that's what we have at this point. Any questions or comments?
Sure, Don.
Hey, Matt, this is Don. So you said the tie-ins are all set on Aquidneck, whether it's for water or electric?
Our input has been complete, and as I understand it, Bob Hanley and Sean have made the information available to Rido and their contractor. So I believe the water and fire service have been sized and located and configured with gate valves and those kinds of things. And as far as gas goes, we're just planning on if there is gas as part of this new project, it shouldn't be any of more of a load than what's servicing the building today. So we would just tap in off of the gas service that goes into the Gaudet building now. And there's also there's a sewer line that's been stubbed in at the drive-in entrance that was done as part of a former project. And so that's all in place.
The gas line, that would be a National Grid issue. And it would be good to have that stub out before they paved Aquidneck as opposed to after.
Yeah, the gas line, like, we did talk to them about, and because we're not planning on bringing any larger service in, we would just come in off of the line that already connects to the building today. So there wouldn't be any new stub out.
So you wouldn't be considering the drive-in access.
No, we would just take it from where it is today.
Okay.
And there will be some discussion, maybe as part of the sustainability workshop, about what the goals are related to electrification and whether there should be an all-electric building, whether there's some components that continue to be gas. So it is a possibility that we wouldn't even have gas with the new building.
Really?
Enough space up there for a tank.
Very well. Thank you. Thank you, folks. Anybody else? Questions? Thanks again, folks. Next item on our agenda, number 5, civics update.
Perfect. So we're gonna see if Manuel comes on live. If not, I'm gonna play the part of
Yes.
Manuel
And just
Cadero.
like,
All right,
on
He's
cue,
impeccable.
right?
Manuel, we are just about to launch your presentation.
All right. Apologies, members of the school building committee, for joining just now. I am on the road and just had to find a place that had enough signal to be able to join you. As always, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and to members of the public. My update today is regarding some of the work that we have been doing in programming around career tech in particular. Before I jump in, I just want to say that this is work that captures some of the frameworks of making this decision about the fourth pathway. But it should not be read as or understood as pointing in any particular direction, even though we have gathered some feedback and we have some programs that we know are interesting or may be good candidates. It is really intended to keep us moving along that path, and in particular to support the design team's work as they do this schematic design set for the RIDE school construction application. So with that, I think we can go, looks like I lost the slide, but we can go to the next slide.
We lost.
Or can you guys see the slides over there? Or no, here we go.
There we go.
All right. So I guess this is a starting point. Just for reference, you might recall that when we did the community survey a few weeks ago or a couple months ago, we asked about pathways that we might consider as part of this planning process. And here you see that marine trades was the biggest respondent, but we also had pretty strong responses around a few other categories, including business, hospitality, tourism, and agriculture, as well as some open-ended answers as well. So that provides us a kind of good reference point as we dive into these conversations. And certainly we've been exploring some of these, and I may focus a little bit on the marine trades, just in terms of some of the examples that we gathered as we went through this. So next slide. As we think about what that fourth pathway is, we are thinking about the approval process for the CT program. And you can see here on the right, this is a self-evaluation rubric. There are links for this at the bottom of a lot of these pages. So if anybody wants to visit and see some of the documentation for themselves, either at the RIDE website or the Governor's Workforce Board, it's all included in here. On the next slide, what you'll see is actually the list of priorities that RIDE uses to evaluate career tech programs for approval. And what's important about this is just to be mindful that, I mean, it's a whole rubric that includes, again, alignment with the Governor's Workforce Board, priority sectors, alignment with industry standards, partnerships. Interestingly, they also want to see student interest and connections to middle school programming. So these are all things that are connected to this project, but also have bigger implications for the district. For the purposes of today, I'm actually just going to focus on a few of these categories because I think they help drive the conversation. One is just to kind of know what the priority sectors are and tying to those industry standards. And the other is the geographic distribution. Number 6, you'll see this is an important one. They don't want similar programs cited too close to each other. So that's something for us to keep in mind as we do this work. Next slide. So in order to understand that, the kind of priority sectors, I just have here a couple of slides. Again, there's a link at the bottom for those of you who want to dive deeper into this, but all of the career tech boards guidance is actually also tied to the Governor's Workforce Board. So this is the occupational cluster analysis, which identifies priority sectors. Next slide. The priority sectors are basically kind of what they're looking at is high wage jobs and how many of them are there. So what you'll see here is a kind of quadrant, and what they're prioritizing is occupations that are in the upper right-hand quadrant, which is jobs that pay well and that look like they have a lot of openings either now or in the future. Next slide. This is kind of the numeric version of what I was just showing. So those of you who want to kind of dig into it a little bit more can look at and see the different occupational clusters. Again, this is the work done by the Workforce Board, but it's tied to the priority industries that then are identified by the Career Tech Board. So in the next slide, this is where it starts to connect to the work that we're doing. Even though this is published by the Workforce Board, it is directly referenced by the Career Tech, and it's basically this mapping of transportation regions. And what this means is that if you're in one region, so we're Middletown is in region number 5, you can see on the map on the left. This graph, this chart on the right identifies what programs are in each of those categories by region. So if we jump to the next slide, there's a closer look. I know that it's a little harder to read those slides. So here you can see a little bit of closer look. This is helpful just for planning purposes. Again, just starting to think about what are the programs that already exist in the region, and what are the programs that actually might score well if selected. So you can start to kind of look across there. There are programs in, you can see at the top, in business, art design. So, business is one of those ones that we were considering. One of the categories that we were actually discussing recently is healthcare. And you'll see that in Region 5, there's no healthcare program. So, that's worthwhile consideration. And, you can keep going down the list again, not intending to point in any single direction, but just providing the information for this body and other bodies as they consider this and we proceed with this. So next slide. Oh, sorry, this is because I'm a little bit blind and I needed to get it even closer. So as you are perusing it later on your own, those of you who have weak eyes like myself can look at it a little bit closer. But we can go ahead to the next slide. So again, just to really kind of connect with the actual programs, I also just wanted to show what programs we're talking about. So again, in Region 5, there are 3 high schools offering career tech programs, and you can see them here, Newport, Portsmouth, Tiverton, my apologies, 3 in addition to Middletown, so 4 total. And so here are the programs that are being offered in Newport, Portsmouth, Tiverton. I mention this, and this is useful for us to think about because we would not want to duplicate any of these because they would not receive support. The thing to note is that Newport has a kind of electrical marine program. So that's worth noting in terms of that kind of marine trades category. And Tiverton has a carpentry technologies program. Now, that one actually, interestingly, we know is marine related, but in the RIDE approval of it is not listed as marine. So I haven't teased that one out to understand that and how it would be considered in the application process. So this gives you a picture of what's in Region 5. In the next slide, I've also identified some of those districts that are either nearby or worth considering. East Providence, not so much, but I wanted to keep Bristol, Warren, Narragansett, and North Kingstown kind of present in the mix just for reference. Because they are near enough, in particular Narragansett and North Kingstown, kind of across the bridge, are near enough that that they also may be considered as similar programs within proximity. And then, and again, you can see that the types of programs in each of these categories, the Narragansett has, we were also talking, just referring back to that prioritization that the committee did, agriculture was one of those categories. This is Narragansett, I think some of you know, has a really strong agricultural sciences program. Again, doesn't mean that we shouldn't consider it, but it would mean that we would want to think about something that's substantially different from that. And then finally, next slide. Just in terms of that kind of marine category, I just wanted to show what else is happening in the state. So here are the 5 RIDE approved marine programs that currently exist. The categories, as you'll see, that the approval categories that RIDE has for CT programs are all in the marine trades are composites, systems, and boat building. So those are the 3 kind of approval categories. You'll notice that for Tiverton High School, I'm not listing one because, as I mentioned earlier, their approval does not explicitly say it's marine, even though we understand that it's a marine program. So again, Newport, which is in the region, has a systems program. We could consider a different type of program, like a composites program, if we wanted to go the marine trade route and wanted to be competitive. Again, not a suggestion, just context. And then the final set of images and slides oh no, sorry, I have two more. So again, this is provided as a reference. I already talked about those three categories, but you'll see them listed in the on the right here. Interestingly, marine trades was in one of the revamps of the industry standards was moved into the architecture and construction category. So you'll see them listed here under architecture and construction, right in the middle. Those are the three marine trades. If you go to this document, which I believe I had linked, but I can always update this deck and before it gets posted with a link to this document as well, you can find the rest of this list. And on the next slide, you'll get a sense of what each of the standards are for each of these career clusters. Some of this information is useful to us on the kind of program and planning side, especially as we think about the types of spaces that might be necessary to support these programs. Then now the final set of images is the substantially similar programs list provided by RIDE. This is not actually on the planning and approval side. This is actually on the student side, but I thought it was a useful thing for us to kind of pay attention to because once programs are approved, RIDE creates the substantially similar list, which basically when students are considering going to another district for a program, this creates some kind of guardrails around where they can go. So right at the top here, if you are in Pawtucket at Shea and want to go to Scituate for an agriculture program, those two are substantially similar and you cannot go to do that. So this is just to give you a picture of the student side of this, the student experience. I copied the whole substantially similar list here. So the next few slides are basically all of the substantially similar programs. I thought that was also useful because it gives us a sense of what are the programs that are appearing a lot. So you'll notice that, a moment ago, actually go back one slide, that there were a lot of information technology programs and a few substantially similar. So that's worth keeping in mind. I'll also note that like the example that we were using with marine trades, you can have a substantially different marine trade program. So just because it's called one thing doesn't mean that it is the same thing. So worth considering. And that takes us to the end. I think the rest of this is just images of the career tech. Again, the thing that I'll say is that the planning for the career tech program approval is on a different timeline than this project. And for the moment, we're moving or have to move a little bit quicker. So for the moment, what the design team is assuming, and they can fill in if necessary, we're basically assuming a space that can accommodate the more space intensive version of programs so that we don't have to go back and ask for something later. So meaning that for the moment, a program like marine trades is a good stand-in for planning because it is more space intensive and technology intensive than some of the other programs that we're looking at. So with that, I'll pause or stop and answer any questions. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Manuel. Question, yes, Tammy?
Yeah, hi, it's Tammy Holden. I didn't see health sciences or the healthcare industry sort of come up. Do you think it's because of our biomed program? People are interpreting that as a healthcare? One question. And also, is there a way to grow a program? So we have the biomedical, say you want to branch out a little bit more into the health sciences and broaden it, or do you have to set up a new CTE?
No, you can broaden it.
You can broaden it?
You can broaden it. Mhm.
Okay,
And that's conversations we're having at the high school. Do
yeah,
we go into like, a CNA
Right.
certification or the what do I want to say? The
I mean,
emergency.
there's so many
yeah,
different
Exactly.
EMT.
technicians or, anything that would be a pathway,
Mhm.
a broader path for the health
It would fall under the biomed.
biomed, so you could
Mhm.
broaden that.
Yeah.
Too. Okay. Thanks.
Thought I saw one that had health services, but not, was it East Providence? I don't remember.
East Providence has a CNA program.
Mm-hmm.
That's far away though.
Right.
Yeah, Manuel, this is Don. So this was just, Marine was, it was based on only the public survey of, I think we said 150 people.
Mhm.
Obviously, the decision will go through the administration, right?
Decision has to be approved by the school committee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Correct.
so this was really just an overview of what the public thought, but the process is going forward. Is there a timeline for that CTE process?
Well, as Manuel said, we're kind of not in sync with the process that where RIDE would have to
Sure.
approve that.
Sure.
So, and the architects are planning, so we want to plan a space that would be flexible enough that if we wanted to do something like marine, could it be, then could we pivot to like small machinery or something like that?
Yeah, my point really is, we don't really need the fourth one until the building is available.
Mhm.
So we have plenty of time to
Yeah.
flush that out as long as they create a space
And
that's
maybe some
flexible
grants-
enough.
Grant opportunities to help kickstart a program too.
Yeah, the only thing we need to make clear to the public is the building will accommodate another one, but we won't know what that is at this time as we move forward.
That was gonna be one of my comments, or, excuse me, Don, or questions. Without identifying, at some point, we're going to have to identify kind of a number of programs that
Mhm.
we're looking at, and because that is going to make or break, but at some point, we're going to have to do that. How close might we be to, I mean, are we at potentially 4 programs, 6 programs?
So right now we have 3 programs.
I
This
know we
would be
have
the
3,
4th.
but
This would
I'm,
be the 4th.
what I'm getting, what
I
I'm
think-
asking is the 4th one, do we have a selection of maybe 6 or 4 or 2 or 8?
I think what Bill and I are asking is, the public may want to have some idea or information prior to November of what are some of the potential
Yeah, that's what-
options
that's what
that
I-
may
that's a better
be
question, right.
offered to the public, in the new building.
So,
That's all.
Obviously, you just mentioned marine trades, that's certainly on the list.
Hospitality.
So I think we
Mhm.
need to,
Hospitality RIDE would not approve that because
Right.
Newport has that.
They have that. Yep.
And that's what I'm saying, is we should at least say what we can
Right.
and can't.
What
just
looks
have
good.
some
That's a
information between
discussion
them.
that our high school is having.
Yep.
We have some transition right now, but
Sure.
we really need to nail that down.
would you speculate without holding you to it, is maybe 6 or 8 different programs, or 3 or 4 different programs that
In that 4th program,
yes, for the 4th program?
Oh, no, I wouldn't say 6. Yeah, it'd be narrowed down to, I think we need to look at the marine. I heard today from the high school entrepreneurism business.
Mhm.
I heard small machinery. So, that's 3. The biomedical, the expansion would
Expansion.
be the CNA program
And-
or the EMT.
Okay, so that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And all of those programs, as we design it, can be designed into the space that's going to be allocated for the 4th program.
That's what we're hoping. But I know our architects probably want a lot more information.
Of course, of course, I think,
I mean, do we
and the
need to
public
put
as
a
well.
lift in? Do we need to put,
Right.
Of having a idea of 4 programs is better than 8.
Mm-hmm.
And at least we can represent that we're narrowing it down, and we're going to work with.
And the last
those
approved
opportunities.
was the biomed, recently. I mean, most recently, right? What approximate time frame was that, like from start to, because I know it's a lengthier process.
It is a lengthy process. So
Get
we
the
started that
faculty and-
program before it was RIDE approved, and you have to have show evidence that it is a successful program, that you have the partners, that you
Mhm.
have the students.
Mhm.
So it was 2 years before before it was RIDE
Right.
approved.
To understand it's a longer
Right. It is a
haul
long
than people
process.
think, just have this and build this.
Yeah, right,
You
right.
know, it
You,
takes a
you have
couple
to show
years.
evidence to RIDE
Right.
that, I think Manuel put it in here,
Yeah.
meeting the standard.
Mhm.
So we use Project Lead the Way. That's a well-known, approved program, has good, a good backing. It's, You know, it's top notch, it's expensive, but you know you have a reliable program
I think
when you
it's.
use Project Lead the Way.
Yeah, thank you, Rosemary. I think it's important to note that, we're planning for it and we're getting closer and, there's a process, but we are actively working on it. So that's all good.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other questions for Manuel? Thank you, Manuel.
Thank you as always.
Next item on our agenda. Owners rep update. Oh, Derek, thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Good evening. So the focus of this evening is going to be related to schedule and what we can expect looking to that first look at the stage 2. So what I've done is I put together a framework document that starts to talk about what exactly it is that goes into the stage 2, and then talking more specifically about where we are on each of the items. So folks start to get a better sense of how things are coming along, what all goes into the book, how we're tracking against schedule and where things may continue to develop over the summer based on conversations with RIDE. So if we continue beyond the cover page, we get to this table of contents, and I got to change my view because I'm also a little blind. So basically there are 9 primary sections, as indicated here in the table of contents. Rather than read them for you, I'm going to go through now section by section, and each section will have a list of inclusions, and that's where I want to talk in more detail about what actually goes into the submission and how we're tracking. So if we carry on. So for section 1, it's really essentially the executive summary. This is a section that nearly everyone who looks at the application will read, where it's talking about what specifically we're looking to do, where we're looking to do it, and what we're looking to spend. So it's talking about building, it's talking about programming, and at a very high level, it's talking about enrollment, and it's sort of saying, if you read nothing else in the package, that this is what the rest of the document will start to tell you. Beyond that, section 2 is one of the larger sections. So the first of which, as you've all kind of witnessed, is very much underway, and we'll have draft ready to the extent that we can. But the lead off is the design and educational program. Followed by that is the understanding that alternatives were explored in terms of feasibility. And we have great documentation on this second point, as we had all studied together very initially as we took this journey together, what a renovation scheme might look like versus the cost of new. So that's essentially complete. We'll just be refiling that information. To come later as part of the things the architect is doing is ultimately the buildings that will be left standing need to be certified that they're structurally viable and will stand for another 50 years. So that will be coming, though likely not in this first draft. As we talked about earlier, and we will again later tonight, there will be a section on high performance goals that will come out of the green charrettes or community hearings that are to be scheduled. I heard as recently as yesterday that there's new legislation. I don't know if it's hit the floor yet exactly or where we are, but there's a potential push for net zero buildings with an incentive of 10% tied to that. So it could be that that's something that emerges if we can make the budget balance what that would require to basically go completely net zero, which would essentially eliminate all fossil fuels and greatly reduce operating costs over the life of the building. We'll be looking at regulatory compliance, which is essentially the refiling of the documents you have now on your existing buildings. For district consolidation considerations, obviously, we all went through the experience of referenda to consolidate with Middletown. So that paperwork, or rather Newport, so that paperwork will go into the submission indicating that we have and continue to look at what opportunities are to do well by our neighbors and went fairly far exploring that path and ultimately are taking this one. But have that information and also have the types of information that Manuel was sharing this evening about how is the academic programming that you're putting forth complementary to as opposed to competitive with your immediate neighbors. So that's what goes in there. And so obviously that is basically finished. As we get closer to the end, we will need to file with Historic Preservation and Heritage Commission. They're basically going to allow us to tear down the buildings that we ultimately want removed. Again, later, probably not in this draft, we'll have more formal read on traffic studies for the new buildings that come up. Later as well, energy modeling will be done. And again, circling back to those high performance goals, ultimately we'll be discussing probably in a second or third draft what the renewable technologies might look like. So again, section 2 is the largest, one of the more technically complex, with the exception of the design documents themselves. So about half of the items in here are basically complete. The other half are really just getting going. If we go to section 3, so this really, it will probably be some of the last things that come through. So you've all seen along the way, sort of the drawings that have been put forth, the renderings that have come forth, the beginnings of the information from the design team. Obviously, as all of the information comes together, they will need the rest of the summer to fully realize what those plans and specifications want to be and ultimately get it estimated. But to the extent that we can provide kind of baseline direction in terms of the path that we're going, that will be helpful for when RIDE comes in for that meeting in June and their initial review of our package. Moving to section 4. Section 4 starts to talk about the financial implications of what you're doing. So the first is the understanding that there's a schedule and that we must be complete within 5 years from date of approval. So that will include things such as cost summary sheets, which right now we certainly have those, though very high level. They were established based on the very next line item, project budgets, which are complete. Looking at what ultimately will be a cash flow and 5-year expenditure plan and how we intend to pay, whether it all comes from bond or some of it is capital, in this case, likely all through bond, and then the sample bond schedule. So that data is going to be at this time assumption based until we get to the other side of the legislative session. But for folks who attended some of the presentations a bit back with town council, and your financial advisor, as well as bond counsel, that work is essentially done and gets filed, and then we'll simply receive a final update once we have a better understanding of where ultimately the bonuses land and what the floor is for reimbursement. But a pretty complete picture, at least to the extent that we can complete it now. And as we get to the end of June and into July, it'll simply get some tweaks. Moving to 5, this is basically intended to ensure that as districts and municipalities go through this process, they've considered future, not only current. And so what they're looking at there is they're trying to understand that you have a good sense of what the school's operating budget is, and that you have a plan to finance new or renovated construction that comes online. And so really what this is essentially an analysis of primarily utility, but some other costs like transportation that will ultimately be looped in as we get further along. But this starts to look at what the year-over-year operating budget is and how these buildings may impact that. The beginnings of that study is happening. We probably won't really have a full look for some time, but we'll submit as much as we can in terms of the current operating budget and our best guess based on what we know today about likely operational impacts based on the new buildings coming online. 6 would be if you needed to acquire land as part of this. In this case, you do not. So that's a non-applicable section. 7, we will likely have ghost written letters for everyone to review. Ultimately, they will need to be signed by school committee as well as municipal representative and superintendent of schools, indicating that there's community alignment around what this package ultimately will be. And this similar to section 1, the state in particular will look to section 7 and say, okay, I'm about to review this package. Let's make sure that it's purposeful and everyone is aligned in terms of what the thinking is. So that'll be an important letter and a good celebration when it gets signed right as it goes in ultimately. Section 8 is the timeline. So I know it has felt a little sticky to date. It will become less and less sticky and fluid as we go forward. So as the schedule starts to solidify, we'll start to lock into some real dates with hard end dates as targets. And really, this is not only the next kind of year and 18 months and 2 years, but the look from submission to referenda through the end of the 5-year period. So this will be a fairly detailed look, and folks will start to understand what the impact will be in terms of when buildings are going up, how that might affect where we're housing students, all of those good things. So this will be the first kind of forward-looking look. I suspect by mid-June, we'll have a very approximate idea. This again, similar to the final drawings, will get nailed down and become much more rigid and final as we get closer to September. And the last section is more of an administration piece that indicates with all of this investment, you've hired basically all of the right consultants up to this point in terms of being able to lead you, the other consultant services that you'll need to pick up as you go through design, ultimately construction, and in the longer distant future closeout is a commitment that you're going to bring a commissioning agent on. What that really does is it says essentially, or it's intended to help you understand that as new or renovated buildings go up with major capital expenditure, the systems often are highly complex. And so making sure that they are running the way that they were designed, the systems are working correctly, and Poe and his team can actually operate them when everyone leaves at the end of 5 years. That's what the commissioning agent is doing for you. And so there's a commitment that you'll work with a commissioning agent to make sure that as you inherit these buildings, they perform as expected and are able to be operated by local staff after the consultants start to leave at the end. So that's a little bit of a view of what you'll be getting in the next couple of weeks and ultimately what the full package will be to ride.
Very well. Thank you, Derek. Questions? Don?
So the first, how many stage twos will there be? So we're gonna do one in June and then just one in September, or do you anticipate more than two?
So I think the initial one in June is to get it in front of everyone as draft, so folks understand what's in it. Then it will be more like a living, breathing document where meetings with the Department of Education will inform and influence changes that are made along the way, what is added. But essentially, if you were to imagine as a book or a binder, it's a book or binder that's going to grow and shrink as we get input from you and the state. So this first release basically starts the conversation with the state to make sure that they're ready to review us and accept us as part of this cycle. We then have a hard deadline for the semi-final issuance, if you will, on September 15th. That nearly always results in additional comments because what the state then does is says, okay, based on everything you've given us, and what we know we need to do in order to support you, both in front of the commissioner, as well as the Council of Elementary and Secondary Education, as a broader scope of people beyond just the school building authority start to look at it. These are some of the frequently asked questions and what we'll need in order to get you through the final approvals hurdle. And so that'll probably likely be a supplementary or third submission to make sure that you are in fact approved in December.
December is when they would give their final. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Typically a week or two before Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it will be.
Christmas to us. Well, November will be hopefully.
Mhm.
Happy Thanksgiving to
Thanksgiving.
us. Good, very well. Any other
Thanks.
questions for Derek? Thank you, Derek.
Thanks, Derek.
Sure.
Next item, community outreach update.
Yeah, so I'm going to stay on
Please
because
do.
we've got lots of absences and lots of things are going on. So in terms of community outreach, we started to talk about this a little bit at the last meeting, but I wanted to give a little bit more of a picture and start to talk about things that are happening that will be ready to be presented to you fairly shortly. So obviously, working with the town, working with the school administration to make sure we're deliberate and go back out to the community in a really meaningful way to make sure that folks are heard, make sure that folks are well informed, and make sure that there's solid material that will not change for you all to share with your friends and neighbors, the community at large, in terms of what the project is. So the way that we're looking to do that is to potentially consider bringing on a partner to help us and Matt Shealy, communications for the town, start to look at what messaging we can do that's facts-based messaging that wouldn't violate campaign finance contribution laws or policies. And so what that is going to look like is we will be looking at who a suitable partner might be, and we're starting to work on background documentation to help Matt, the school department, and town. Essentially, as information becomes more clear as we get to the other side of the end of June and the other side of the legislative cycle, I suspect we could start to expect soft launch of some of what will be that final messaging and data to come out in July. And then August begins a 90-day countdown. So August is our 90-day mark. September is 60. October is 30 and early voting. And November, I believe 7th is the day of the referenda. And so really that lead up, as people are kind of finishing their summer, to the extent that we can capture people in August and certainly by September and obviously in October, that will be where the community is really re-engaged to make sure that they have all of the information that they may want and need so that they can make an informed decision for themselves in November or shortly before for early
So
voting.
Can I ask you, looking at partners, you're looking at potential firms to
Yeah,
assist?
like a communications consultant.
Consultant.
So we'll probably look at a handful of communications consultants, make sure that they're a good match for you and what we need. Make sure that they understand that it's informational and facts-based communication only, and that it would be a good fit with the town's communication personnel. But I think it will be important and a step worth taking as we do the final push to bring the community back in.
Will you just bring it on, or do you need approval from?
So it would be the way it would work is we would put before you for consideration. We'd likely go out to a number of people,
Okay.
try and get what we felt the best proposal and partnership would be, and then put forth before you as a change to our contract for your consideration. You have the right to accept or refuse that. We will go through a communications plan either way, but you and we may benefit from having third-party expertise as we
Thank
get
you.
to that.
When might
90
we
day.
see something like that?
I would say with it, if not next meeting, the meeting after.
Very well, thank you.
Yeah.
Would that group put together like a whole package and a look to everything, or is it more the informational, the background, the putting together the words? Would it?
Yeah,
know?
it's assistance. So
Mhm.
thankfully in Middletown, you have a fairly strong team already,
Yep.
but it's making sure that Matt has what he needs and we have an outside eye looking at what the final mailers might and
Mhm.
should be, what the final FAQ should be, what an appropriate schedule for letters to the editor from you all might and should be.
Something like we likely didn't need
Mhm,
last time, but we likely will need this time.
Mhm.
Correct.
But I just think everything put out anywhere needs to have a set look to it. So
Right.
we know like, oh, this is what this is about, like starting
Right.
even without that.
The brand,
those
the
folks
branding.
branding. I mean, I
Yeah.
think we need
Which is what we
just
kind of
set
struggled on
up,
last time.
go crazy with that even for the sustainability to have to hit people when Matt does, just to have that branding, that little something,
Yeah.
I think it's important.
Yeah, yeah, the minimum requirement obviously is that the general public is informed because that's how they will be able to vote their conscience. So that's, we want to do even more than that, but we need to make sure that we at least have a very informed electorate. So that's the goal.
Good with that. Yeah,
If
Don.
My concern is from a timing standpoint, if we don't have a recommendation or a proposal from you for 4 more weeks. That's the end, that's middle to end of June, and we need to kick this, we need to start communicating in July, so we don't have a lot of time.
We do not. But we're excited about it.
But I think in the summertime, I think as Derek said, when we get into August and people are coming back from vacations, and September and October are going to be a very informative time to the public, because people are going to be traveling more this summer than they have in the past couple of years because of COVID. So you're going to see a lot of people that are saying, we're out of town for a week here, a week there. In August, we start with students going back into sports the last few weeks of school of August. So you will definitely have more people that are back in town getting ready to go back to school.
Yeah.
I think in July, putting too much money into a lot of PR, I think getting it solidified and.
Well, I'm not
ready to
talking
go.
about
Right.
PR, I'm talking about starting the work.
Right.
Oh.
If we don't have somebody selected till the end of June, we need to start the work in July if you want to have it in August.
Oh, but I think whoever you bring on, you're gonna have a plan in place of.
Yeah, more or less a plan, a framework and a plan will be in place in terms of our solicitation to a partner. And then I think the other important piece, because yes, it is a critical path timeline, but in terms of the messaging being accurate and concise, we won't actually have the data that we need until the end of June, July anyway.
Right.
So we need the legislative session to close. We need to have gotten to the other side of the first draft of stage 2 so that we have tangible documentation from the design team of what it is that we're putting forth and asking people to make a decision on. So timing is tight, but perfect. More time would be nice, but we probably wouldn't have the background data we need to be able to do much of anything.
And your visioning sessions aren't until towards the end of June anyway, so you would need that data to be
Right.
incorporated into whatever you.
I'm confident that
Yeah.
they're on the right path and they're capable of doing what they say they're gonna do. I'm good with that. Okay.
And Matt has done a lot of legwork,
Sure.
so
Oh, yeah.
anyone coming in and partnering with him, the package is going to be there, basically. I mean, the videos, Matt did 3 videos from our visits. Those went out on the town site. They went out on our site.
Yep. Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm good. Yeah,
At
I'm right.
risk of being ignorant,
Sure.
new versus existing cost analysis. I think that's important for the taxpayer to know.
So we have it. And I'm not going to remember it because it's been a minute. I'd have to go back and look at the data. But in terms of the beginning of this journey and its most recent iteration over the last year or two, it began as let's look at selective renovations. The state was not supportive at all, but we did do fairly exhaustive looks at your existing conditions, what it would take to get you to a place where you're warm, safe, and dry, and that what it would also take to try and enhance kind of educational practices in your existing buildings. So we'll be able to provide that documentation as well as explain to folks, should that come up, sort of the journey of that being an initial concept, the pushback that you and all received from the state about their willingness to fund it, or in that case, not being super willing to fund it, versus then the pivot to perhaps a consolidation with Newport, and ultimately going it alone and working with your neighbors in a different way. So that there's actually a very strong and clear narrative and timeline. So we can put together the kind of the 1-page version that everyone can kind of understand and relate to, because it's been at least a year of work, if not more. But we can certainly try and consolidate that down to provide folks an understanding of the process and how we arrived at where we are.
I think that's critical.
There's still a
I
fair amount of variable factors that we just, need answers on, and they're coming in fast and furious, I'm sure.
Communication problem is we have to distill
All of that.
work into something that
Of course.
Johnny Q. Public.
Well, I'm confident we can do that.
We got this.
Okay.
We've got this.
Okay. Any other questions for Derek on the community outreach update. Yeah.
Good.
Okay, thanks, Derek.
Yeah, thank you.
Number 8, update from town and school administration.
Mark, you want to go first?
I have an update on the legislation. Sean it was at the State House today meeting with people, and he says things are moving forward and he doesn't seem to have an issue with anything, but doesn't know if everything will pass at this point. But it looks good.
What's the end of the session? Do we know the date? It's soon.
Soon, I don't know
Very
the end
soon.
of the date.
In
Yeah,
June.
yeah,
Yeah, fiscal year ends
Usually
June,
it's June.
so.
yeah.
In June, yeah, I usually track that, but yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
gonna happen quickly, as they always do. No concerns. That's good.
Well,
At this point?
you know, there's a
Audit
lot
up.
of legislation up
Audit
there,
up.
so
There's a
I'm
lot.
sure some are looking better than others at this point.
Stay tuned.
And then
Yep.
from the school side, we have school committee members here. You want to talk about the videoing of the,
You got it. Go ahead. You're in a roll.
okay.
My voice isn't good today. I'm having allergy issues.
So there was no formal vote, but we just had a discussion about running these meetings live, and there was consensus, yeah, let's do them live. The other piece was we wouldn't have back and forth questions, but we would try to get some kind of management where if whoever was watching had a question, they could post the question and we would get back to them. Is that how we?
They could
Left
submit
it.
a comment or something, because I think Charlie was it, or was looking for some feedback or
Mhm.
mentioned it in one of the prior
Mm.
meetings.
So
Right now, we only allow public input at the beginning. So the
Mhm.
question would be, do we allow it through Zoom at the
That's-
beginning?
That's what they were, if there's how many people might want to be there, how long would the meeting be? So maybe feel it out as it goes. I don't know.
Yeah,
you know?
I think it's worth looking at
Yeah.
and, you're going to get questions when you put something
Mhm.
on Zoom or live. You're going to get questions and, based on our agenda, we won't touch it unless it's at the beginning. But if it comes in after the beginning, then the administration can deal with it. And then if it comes up for the next meeting, then so be it. But there's not anything.
No,
that we're gonna
my point is Charlie and Ed met with town solicitor and they came up with this format for our meeting where they only allowed public input at the beginning. So whether we do it live or not, it has to be in that section of the meeting if someone wants to raise their hand. That's my only
No, that's what
point.
I'm saying. I'm saying they can put a comment in, but we're not going to address it because it's not at the beginning of the meeting. But certainly,
Unless
we
it's the
can't stop
beginning of the
people from
meeting.
commenting.
Yeah, I'm saying don't even allow them. We're not allowing them for
No,
the
wait a
people in the audience.
What the point is, my understanding of this is that we would be able, if somebody had a question partway through the meeting, they could post it. And then we would get that question and respond to it for the next meeting.
Do we allow that to the public today?
If somebody emails a question in, then yes, so it doesn't mean that if that's the only forum, if that's the only opportunity that this person can submit a question, there's nothing wrong with submitting a question. It doesn't mean we're
Agreed.
going to respond to it,
Agreed.
but it may only be their, it might be their only source.
Yep.
To submit a question.
And
So
that's fine, but let's allow the public in the room to do the same thing if we're going to do that, is my
They
point.
can-
We're
they
not
can- they
allowing the
can
public.
Open
to
their
do it.
computer and
Submit a
email
question.
and send an email question.
Okay.
Yeah.
You missed.
No, I understand what you're saying. Anybody can submit a question. If they're sitting here on a piece of, and they want to submit a question, nobody will turn it away. We would just take it.
Put it aside. We won't
aside.
act on it.
Okay.
I mean, it's, it's.
No, it needs to be fair. You're absolutely right, Don. But I think that if somebody was sitting here after the public forum was over and they submitted a piece of paper with a question on it, we would certainly not respond at that particular meeting, but we would say, we'll take this into and move it forward.
Our agenda,
I don't
our
think we want to turn
policy.
anybody away.
Our agenda, our policy is clear. We accept public input at the beginning of the meeting. That's public input. Doesn't mean they can't ask a question. Doesn't mean they can't. It can happen during a meeting. It can have, we're not going to accept it up here. If they want to write it down and give it to us, we'll put it off to the side and say, we'll deal with it at another time at the public input part of it. We can't stop people from.
I think the
Yeah.
point was we weren't going to get in a back and forth dialogue with
That's the
someone
point.
on Zoom.
That's the point.
Right.
Exactly.
That they would have an opportunity at
here.
the beginning of the meeting, just like anyone here.
Correct.
Yes.
And it
I
could,
mean, the COVID stuff is over now, so this, people should be here if they have
But it is
something.
good to have it available live and
It'd be helpful if a lot
It's
of
helpful.
people have a similar question to see, oh, this needs
Agree.
to be clarified.
Mhm.
Or some people are wanna, you know.
Yeah,
I think,
came
the
up.
only
Eh,
point
Yeah.
we need to now determine the logistics of how we want to do it. If we choose to do Zoom webinar, right, and then it'll be managed by Tim in the back of the room. If we could choose to do Zoom meeting and just push it to YouTube, then they can't even ask questions. So we need to align on with
Right.
David and Denise was going to work with superintendent. How are we going to broadcast first? If we choose the latter, they can't even ask a question.
Right.
My point is, I think we just need to iron out all the
I
logistics
think that's
first.
exactly what David just said, what you just
Exactly.
said. And he was leaning, I think, towards the YouTube.
Mhm.
Correct. He's
But
leaning
definitely
towards
left
live
it.
meeting,
So-
Zoom meeting broadcast through YouTube doesn't allow any input for the public, period. So I think just finalize that last
Yep,
piece
that's fine.
and be clear
He was going to
s-
get
that
back
we're,
to the school committee at our June meeting.
exactly.
I sup- I
Yeah,
s- I
Could throw
support
an
that.
email out like anything else too.
Exactly.
If anybody wants to throw an email out,
I
that's great.
support that.
Yep,
I
that's
support
good.
that. Okay,
Yeah,
any
yeah,
other?
No,
updates?
as Manuel and the team keep meeting, we meet weekly with our middle and high school team to discuss the plans with our architects, Manuel and our project manager. Our teachers have been informed, they've been participating with these visioning meetings coming up. I think, that's a little more of getting the word out. So we're looking
Very well.
forward to it.
Thank you. Action item.
Take this one with in Sean's absence. So this is a soft acceptance, but I'd like you to take action on kind of a broad directive so that we can move forward. And so as we discussed earlier this evening, and we've talked about it the last couple of meetings, I think there is a shared understanding that we want to have as many of the public that would like to attend have the ability to do so in terms of thinking about sustainability on these projects. And so it was put forth that perhaps we should do a daytime as well as an evening session. RIDE also needs to come in to talk to us about some of the things we've been talking to you about in terms of the process going forward. They had indicated that that regularly scheduled meeting on June the 21st would be a good evening to do that. We thought it made sense to have the first charrette earlier that day. Roll into the building committee meeting and have RIDE complete their presentation. They may tour some of your buildings just before that, and then we would launch into the evening portion of the sustainability conference as part of the as part or immediately thereafter of your school building committee meeting. So if that in broad terms is acceptable to folks, we'd want you to take action for the school administration and town administration to go ahead and work on setting all of that up.
I'm supportive of that.
Yeah, it's going to be a busy day because we have the budget, the public, but I think, let's put it out there. There's enough
Mhm.
people and we'll make it all or try to make it all.
Mhm.
And when we just will have to split up,
Mhm.
even as a school committee, we'll have to split up.
Mhm.
I mean, town council probably isn't gonna be able to be present, but if we do have it at the same time as that meeting in the
We need
evening.
to keep the ball rolling and.
Yeah,
we do.
plan. And so do we need a motion for this?
You want a formal vote?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, since it was on as an action item.
all right. I make a motion that we schedule a meeting for RIDE. For the town and schools for the sustainability workshop. Is that what you wanted me to say?
Second,
Yeah, that could
Sounds
fit
On
keep-
June
On June
22nd.
first.
21st.
21st.
And we have a meeting in between where we'll probably get much more updated.
We'll get details.
Very well. Vote. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I will be away that week, so I won't be able to support. I know you have to split up, but I won't be here on the 21st, so just
dare
wanted
you.
to note that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very well, motion carries.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Derek.
That will be the same day as the building committee too, because I'm looking ahead here.
That's the idea.
Ride is going to
the
attend
idea.
the meeting.
Oh,
Yeah, yes, that was.
Right has to come to
Meeting
the meeting.
after.
Try to coordinate all together.
got it. Okay.
Any other
A little slow here tonight.
items? Anybody have a
Move to adjourn?
motion to adjourn?
Second,
Discussion, all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Very well, thank you.